Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the Frontline Changes Report. And a lot of frontline changes. Crazy! It's only 24 hours time and this much. So particularly before you drop off, there is the New York front intel has dropped. It's mind blowing. So no, stay tuned. So there's frontline changes over at MOSZARYFA, Andreevka, Zereny, Spurny, Rozdolivka, Pivnichny region, Zalizny region, New York, Timofeyevka, Progress, Podyeda, Konstantinivka, and Robotine. So basically, almost all the front line we have frontline changes, except for the Kherson and the Kharkiv front. And so we go. So we go into the Oskil fronts, where the Ukrainians have some success around this region here. So over at the MOSZARYFA region, so you can see this MOSZARYFA and GFK Zereny. So in this region, there is some major updates. So over at MOSZARYFA, the Russian forces previously was attacking inside MOSZARYFA, as well as they were on the outskirts of Andreevka. And however, as I mentioned before, the I believe I've mentioned before, due to the way how the geography around here, uh, where there is a high ground, I believe, is it high ground or something? So anyway, whatever it is, the Russian forces are unable to hold the ground. So they have withdrawn from this area here, from this entire front line to a more defendable line where they have the various forests for them to build from, as well as nearer to the city, to the villages. And the Ukrainians basically have taken a position, or at least no, the Russians are not there anymore. The Ukrainians retake the entire eastern outskirt of MOSZARYFA and Andreevka. So this is a massive change around here, and some rare Ukrainian success in recent times. So so yeah, and of course it could also be, if you think in a more pro-Russian mentality, this could also be a show that the Russians did not want to break this kill zone around here. They harassed enough, they withdraw. So the Russians are known to attack and withdraw, just to lure the Ukrainians back into the kill zone, or to draw Ukrainian forces into that specific sector. That is also a possibility. But this being said, there's no guarantee that the Ukrainians actually retake the position where the Russians withdrew. So no, there's something to note. South of this position, however, is a bit different. Russian forces maneuvered in this area, south of Andreevka, around Zereny region. The Russian forces have taken the entire coastal line around here up to this tree line. So while the Russian forces withdrew from this area, allowing the Ukrainians to establish around this line around here, the Russians actually have continued to hold this line here, so that they are able to achieve a much better tactical positioning around here. This is more defendable, and the Ukrainians uh lost ground basically in this Zereny region. So it's interesting swapping of land between Russian and Ukrainian side, and in my opinion, the Russians have a better deal here. And so anyway, the battle will continue. I think the Russians are maneuvering to establish a much better kill zone around Andreevka. And yeah, so this is what it is. So very interesting developments around here. The next frontline change is we go all the way to the Sivers front. So over the Sivers front, we have some updates. The Ukrainian mapping Deep State UA have claimed to have retaken Spurny, or maybe they have never taken Spurny. I do not know. So I mentioned before, Spurny is very flat, and there is very few places around Spurny here for to hold a position. So somehow the Ukrainians prefer to stay there, and the Russians, maybe if you believe the Ukrainian mapping, the Russians have redrawn again out of this position. In fact, Ukrainian mapping is a lot more like the entire area here of Spurny is totally under Ukrainian control. So that's why you can see this massive patch of a contested zone, or the overlapping mapping, because in terms of Ukrainian mapping, the front line is like, in fact, they don't even acknowledge Ivano Darivka is under Russian control. They put one gray zone around here, and that's about it. This is as much as they went into, you know, verifying or corroborating with the Russian reporting or the geolocations. So in terms of DPS mapping, geolocation reigns supreme for now. We will continue to monitor and see, you know, how this develop. If in another few days or a week from now the Ukrainians continue to claim Ivano-Darivka, then the Ukrainian mapping will return to cover up the Ivano-Darivka region to corroborate with the Ukrainian mapping. So, but tentatively, the geolocation will take precedence. After Spurny, the next frontline change is over at Rosolivka. Ukrainian mapping has given up this entire northern part of Rosolivka. They acknowledge the Russian success in this region, with the Russian forces now taking the entire northern tree line north of Rosolivka. So this is now an acknowledgement of the Russian success at Rosolivka, and now the front line has moved directly to Perezny. So this now the front line is now here. Perezny is here along this Perezny along the railway line and the settlement, and the Russian forces, according to the Ukrainians, are here. So this is the current established situation in terms of the Ukrainians face, and this entire area here is gray zone according to the Ukrainians. So that's all from the Rosolivka Sivers Front region. We move on after Rosolivka. We jump all the way to New York Front. There's no updates over at the Bakhmut Front. Over at the New York Front, so at the thorax sector, you can see massive update around here. It may not look like much when I do this zoom, but we are talking about, okay, we can talk about the whole front line change across a 4 kilometers stretch. And if I just draw according to the front line circumference is around 6 kilometers. So this is quite a big amount change. If I zoom in, Russian forces, according to the Ukrainians, have captured the entire of this high-rise zone. Russian forces captured most of the forest as well over on the eastern part of this thorax sector. A huge part of this residential area stretching all the way to the edge of this wilderness. The entire settlement here is captured. And then stretching down all the way to Zalizny. This entire region is now captured, including the semi-high-rise zone in Zalizny as well. So the Russian forces made massive progress around here. So we didn't have much news of the New York front for a long time, and this is exactly what I mean. The updates do drop in batches, and when they come down, sometimes it's very shocking. Like, to me, this is huge. It means that the Russians have not really paused at all. They have been crawling through the front line. Every day there's probably a few hundred meters being taken, and so after a few days we have this sudden massive change where the biggest advance is around more than a kilometer. So, and then in the shortest area is probably around 200-300 meters. So ultimately this is huge amount of progress for just a 24 hours update. And this strategically does change everything around the thorax sector. And so we shall see how this goes. Pivnishny is still a pretty big settlement, and the Ukrainians still have the castle around here. I mean the high ground. I nicknamed this the castle. So the castle will protect this entire area. So Russia is just simply trying to surround the castle right now in this maneuver, but it will take some time. It will still take some time, not so fast. So over at the Zalizny region, other than, of course, as mentioned earlier, the Russian forces have taken most of this semi-high-rise zone. They have also expanded southward along this highly fortified region, as well as the suburbs around south of this other castle around here. So I'm not sure how much coverage this castle can provide for the Ukrainian forces attacking in these various directions, but clearly the Russians have not stormed it as they go towards trying to attack the lower ground, and probably going for the rest of Zalizny. And once they capture this, they can actually go elsewhere and totally ignore the castle. That is a possibility. So we shall see. This castle will just be a target for airstrikes, and anyone that try to snipe or attack from there, yeah, it's pretty suicidal as well if the Russians have this much land. But anyway, this is huge frontline changes around here. and soon we may not talk about Zelizny much more with the fighting move on to Torres itself. Over at the New York City region or the New York front around near to west of Yurivka, based on Russian claims, Russian forces have actually expanded their control around here. This is based on Russian claim. This is not confirmed by Ukrainian mapping, and expanded some of this control around this Petrovskaya Gora region. So this entire neighborhood here in New York is just known as Petrovskaya Gora. So this is the current situation around in New York. There is not much incursion into the actual new city itself yet. It could be due to the strong Ukrainian resistance, or just due to strategic considerations that they are not ready to do that yet. So if we zoom in a bit, we can see that the Russians have taken a bit more grounds around this residential area, and of course in this car garage region. So how I know this is a car garage, because in the New York in the Bakhmut front, in the Battle of Bakhmut, the car garages actually looks like this. And understanding from Russians who live in Russia, particularly during the Soviet era, this is what they do. This is where they keep their cars. So when they want to go far, so usually within the city itself, they don't really need a car, so they don't drive the car out. So something like this. I may get the certain details wrong, but the general idea is like this. They'll drive the car to their dachas and have some holiday. It feels like a very nice life during the Soviet life. As long as you don't go into politics and don't want power, I think you're perfectly fine. If you want power and you want political influence, then you probably die very fast. So maybe they are holding up to wait for the Russians to come from Zelizny, and then they can do this pincer and close up this entire encirclement. That is a possibility. So we shall see how this develop around at the New York front. After the next front line change, we go into the Avdiivka front. Over in the northern flank of the Avdiivka front, Russian forces have invaded into Timofeyevka itself, with in the western where there is advance over in the northwestern part of Luzovatsky. In the north of Progress, according to Russian mapping, this is based on Deep State UA. Progress. So Progress is also Ukrainian mapping. So these are both based on Ukrainian mapping. So this is confirmed. So in the north of Progress, Russian forces also have closed up and straightened the front line north of Progress. And as I mentioned before, this is an impossible place for the Ukrainians to entrench and defend. So they have to redraw to a better line in order to defend. If they don't, then either the soldiers are stupid or the commanders are evil. So either way, the Ukrainians did it, and then they managed to secure the ground, and so the Russians are able to secure the ground, not the Ukrainians. So this is the how it goes over here. And in the Timofeyevka, as you can see, based on the Ukrainian mapping, Russian forces have entered into the western part of Timofeyevka. My feeling is that Timofeyevka will fall very quickly. The Ukrainians probably will hold the line along this Kazany Torres water body or river around here. So this is where the Ukrainians are probably going to hold a front, while the Russians going to take over the rest in this attack. And then they will actually secure the entire area here, probably including this tree line. So this is probably what's going to happen next. But we shall see. After this frontline change of we jumped all the way to the Donetsk front. Over at the Boyeda region, we have a geolocation north of Konstantinivka, southwest of Boyeda. Russian forces geolocated at this position, invalidating Ukrainian claims that they still have this position southwest and west of Boyeda, which means that the Russian forces have at least made huge progress in this region here along the highway, the 00532 highway, and they are going to head towards the northern part of Konstantinivka. So this is the advance we are seeing over here. If we zoom out a bit, you can see that this is pretty strategically important. If the Russians continue to push south, they will encircle the entire Ukrainian forces around the Paraskovievka region, and they will force a withdrawal from this north of Paraskovievka and then secure Paraskovievka. Currently, the Russians struggle badly to capture Paraskovievka, despite all this announcement by Russian Defense Ministry and Ryaba about the capture. 28th of June, We are already 1 month in. We are already at now it's like 30th of July. 1 month in, then the Russians still have not managed to capture or really secure Paraskoviyevka. So this is the reality here. At Konstantinivka, the Russian forces expanded control, geolocated within the southeastern part of the settlement as the Russians continue to advance towards the center. Previously, Russian forces also attacked in the south, so we shall see the Russians probably attack another from into this industrial zone south of Konstantinivka and then secure this. So anyway, we will continue to monitor. We'll talk more about it in the SIP rep. And over in the south, sorry, not the south. After this Konstantinivka, the next frontline change is over at Zaporizhia front. And over at the Robotine region, similarly, there is also a geolocation along this Gali region and then the junction of the tree line, confirming Russian advances and capture around this northwestern part of Robotine. And with this formation and with the Russians previously geolocated along the highway, I believe the most likelihood is that the Russians have already captured this entire area here. It's impossible for the Ukrainians to hold such a position around here, in this kind of shape, or this to just to protect this trench line. I don't think it makes sense. Ukrainian forces should be redrawing out of this area here to much more better lines. So Russian forces likely would have secured the entire straighten out the entire front line around this northwestern part of Robotine. So anyway, these are the frontline changes report. So a lot of frontline change for a 24-hour period. So anyway, press the like button, subscribe. Stay tuned for the situation report in 8 hours time. 8 hours time. So anyway, we shall see how this goes. I will do the situation report later. And thank you for watching. Do press the like button again. Subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next update.